My name is Marissa, and if you had told me a year ago that my life would unravel in front of an audience, under bright lights, with hundreds of eyes waiting for my next word, I would have thought you were joking. But that moment came, and I was the one who set it in motion. Started with a ring, a velvet box. Jason, the man I had loved for 4 years, got down on one knee in our living room. There were candles flickering on the windowsill, soft music playing, and my breath caught when he looked up at me with those practiced brown eyes. "Marissa," he said, "you're my forever. Will you marry me?" I had dreamed of that question for years. My voice broke as I whispered yes. The ring slid onto my finger. I cried. He kissed me. For the first time in months, I thought everything was right again. I thought maybe all his late nights and vague excuses meant nothing. I thought he was truly mine. For 3 days I floated. My heart carried me through work, through calls with my mother, through every dream of planning the wedding. I was engaged. I was happy. I was safe. Then came the call from Lauren. Lauren was my best friend, my confidant, my sister and everything but blood. We had grown up together. Shared secrets, heartbreaks, victories. If anyone knew my soul, it was her. So when she asked to meet me for coffee, her voice trembling, I assumed she had some silly confession, maybe about a crush, maybe about a bad day. But when she sat across from me, her hands shaking, I knew it was bigger. Her face was pale. Her eyes glassy. She looked like someone about to confess to a crime. "Marissa," she whispered, "I need to tell you something. Jason proposed to me." I laughed. A hollow, hysterical laugh that echoed through the coffee shop. "That's not funny," I said. But she wasn't laughing. She opened her purse, pulled out a small box, and placed it on the table. Inside was a diamond ring, different from mine but just as real. "He proposed to me 3 nights ago," she said. The world tilted. My chest seized. My ears rang. I clutched my coffee cup so hard it burned my palm, but I didn't feel it. All I could see was Jason on his knees again, speaking the same lies to another woman. My best friend. Lauren swore she hadn't known. She thought I had broken up with him. She said he told her I was gone, that we were finished. Her tears spilled as she reached for my hand. But her words barely touched me. My heart had already split in two. And in that shattering moment, a new fire sparked. I would not cry. I would not beg. I would not let Jason or anyone else see me as weak. If Jason wanted to play with fire, I would be the one to burn down the stage. And the choice he thought he could delay, the choice between me and Lauren, I would force him to make. Not in whispers. Not in shadows. But in front of everyone. I sat frozen at that coffee shop table, my engagement ring glinting on my finger, her engagement ring sparkling inside the open box. 2 rings. 2 women. 1 liar. My voice trembled as I asked the only question I could form. "When did he ask you?" Lauren whispered. "Last week. He told me he'd been planning it for months. He said you and he were done. He showed me text messages, Marissa. Messages where you supposedly said you never wanted to see him again." My blood ran cold. Fake texts. Fabricated proof. Jason had forged my words to poison my best friend against me. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had written an entire script where I was the villain. I forced myself to stay composed. "And you believed him?" I asked, my voice sharp. Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I wanted to. 'Cause I wanted him. But when you called me 2 days ago and you sounded so happy, so full of light, I realized something wasn't adding up." Her guilt hung in the air like smoke, but I barely breathed it in. My mind was already racing. Jason had lied to me, to her, to our entire circle of friends. And he thought he could keep juggling, that he could keep the illusion alive. That night I went home. Jason was waiting, smiling as if the world belonged to him. He kissed me, asked how my day was, and started talking about wedding venues. I studied his face, the charming dimples, the careful eyes, the voice that could sound so sincere. And all I saw was rot. "Jason," I said softly, "do you love me?" He looked surprised by the question, but he didn't hesitate. "Of course I do. More than anything." His hand slid over mine, over the ring he had placed there. And I realized how easily lies could slip off his tongue. How many women had believed them before me? How many would believe them after? Later that night, when he showered, I opened his laptop. I don't know what I expected, but my instincts were right. emails to Lauren, love notes copied and pasted between us both with only names changed, dates and promises mirrored word for word. And then the photos. Him and Lauren at dinner. Him and Lauren at the very restaurant where he first told me he loved me. The bile rose in my throat. I wanted to scream, to drag him out of the shower and smash the laptop in front of him. But instead I closed it gently, set it back on the table and walked to the mirror. I stared at my reflection, my face pale, my eyes hollow. And beneath the exhaustion there was steel. Jason thought he was clever. He thought his web of lies was unbreakable. But he had underestimated me. The betrayal was now undeniable. My best friend had his ring. I had his ring. And the proof was stacked higher than his arrogance. But proof wasn't enough. Not for me. I didn't just want to leave him. I wanted the truth to burn. I wanted every single person who had believed his mask to see what he had hidden underneath. And so, as Jason slept peacefully that night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, formulating the first outlines of my revenge. Because he hadn't given me a choice. He had forced me to decide between silence and exposure. And I knew which one I would choose. The morning after my discovery, Jason poured coffee into my favorite mug, kissed me on the forehead, and called me his forever. The words dripped with poison I no longer swallowed. I smiled back, steady, calm, while my mind replayed the images I had seen on his laptop. Lauren's smile pressed against his shoulder, the way he looked at her with the same eyes he used to look at me. I didn't storm out. I didn't scream. Instead, I did what Jason never expected. I played along. Every day became an act. He thought he was the director, but I was already rewriting the script. That evening, after he left for work, I opened a hidden folder on my phone. Inside it, I began collecting everything. Screenshots of his emails, copies of the fake text messages he had shown Lauren, receipts of dinners he had taken her to, the same ones he had claimed were late nights at the office. And then came the financial records. Jason had a habit of using the same password variations, and within minutes I was inside his shared banking apps. My stomach twisted as the numbers lined up in betrayal. 2 reservations at hotels I had never visited. Charges for jewelry stores. Dates that didn't match anniversaries we shared. I started creating a digital folder labeled Truth. The folder grew faster than I imagined. Emails, receipts, screenshots, even voice memos where I recorded his phone calls when he thought I was asleep. Jason had a smooth voice, but even his lies cracked under pressure. One night, I heard him whispering in the bathroom. He thought the water running would cover his voice, but I pressed my phone to the wall and hit record. "You know I'll choose you," he whispered. "Just let me figure out how to end things with her without destroying my reputation." Her. That was me. I clenched my fists until my nails dug into my palms. My husband-to-be was treating me like an obstacle to be cleared away, a burden to be discarded quietly. But I wasn't going to go quietly. In the days that followed, I carefully scheduled meetings with Lauren under the pretense of reconciliation. I asked her for her side of the story, listened without interrupting, and slid my phone on the table, recording every word. She told me she couldn't stop thinking about him. I typed in my notes. He told me the same thing 2 days earlier. The puzzle pieces snapped together. I also turned to an unlikely ally. His coworker, Emily. She had always looked at me with pity, the kind you give someone walking blindfolded toward a cliff. When I asked her for coffee, she hesitated but finally agreed. And there across from me she broke. "Marissa," she whispered, "I don't know how to tell you this. Jason, he brags. He brags about fooling you both. About having his cake and eating it too. He says you'd never see it coming." I forced a smile even as my heart clenched. "Thank you, Emily. That's all I needed." That night when Jason crawled into bed and kissed my cheek, I lay still, clutching my phone to my chest. Inside it was an entire arsenal of his undoing. His lies were no longer whispers in the dark. They were recorded, time-stamped, undeniable. I knew one thing for certain: Jason's downfall would not come in silence. It would come in public. The idea began forming. If Jason wanted to build a reputation on lies, then I would tear it down with truth. Not just between him and me. Not just between him and Lauren. I wanted the whole world, our families, our friends, his colleagues, to see the man he truly was. But exposure needed timing. It needed precision. So I waited. Patiently. I let him think he was still in control. I smiled at dinner. I planned our future. And all the while my folder of truth grew heavier, sharper, waiting for the right moment to strike. And that moment was coming sooner than he could ever imagine. When you discover betrayal, you stand at a crossroads. You can confront it alone, raw and unprepared. Or you can build an army, even if it is a small one, and fight smart. I chose the second path. I realized that if I wanted Jason's lies to collapse, I could not do it in isolation. I needed witnesses. People who would confirm what I already knew and amplify the impact when the time came. Revenge without an audience is just anger. Revenge with the right audience becomes justice. The first person I turned to was my sister, Claire. She had always been fiercely protective of me, the kind of sister who could smell dishonesty a mile away. I asked her to meet me for dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant far from Jason's usual haunts. When I placed the phone on the table and pressed play, her fork froze midair. Jason's recorded voice filled the space. "You know I'll choose you. Just let me figure out how to end things with her without destroying my reputation." Claire set the fork down, her jaw tightening. "He actually said that?" I nodded, my hands trembling only slightly. "That's not all. There's more. So much more." For the next hour I showed her emails, texts, screenshots. With each piece of evidence her expression hardened. Finally she leaned in close. "Marissa, you cannot let this go quietly. You deserve better. But if you want to destroy him, you'll need a plan. Something he will never recover from." Her words lit a fire inside me. I wasn't just collecting proof anymore. I was preparing to detonate it. Next came Emily, the coworker who had already shown me cracks in Jason's facade. I invited her for coffee again, this time with a purpose. "Emily," I said, "you saw what he was doing. I need you to be there when the truth comes out." She looked at me nervously, her hands wrapped tight around her mug. "You want me to testify?" "Not in a courtroom," I said softly. "At first, at least. But I need someone from his professional circle who knows he bragged about this. Someone who can't be ignored. Will you stand with me?" After a long silence, she nodded. "Yes. He deserves it." Piece by piece my team assembled. My sister. His coworker. And unexpectedly my mother. I had avoided telling her at first. She adored Jason, believed he was the best thing that had ever happened to me. But one evening, unable to carry the weight alone, I sat with her in the living room and opened my folder of truth. She wept silently as the evidence played. When the recording ended, she turned to me with red eyes. "My daughter will not be humiliated. Not by him. Not by anyone." Her resolve surprised me, but it also fueled me. I had allies in places Jason thought were safe. But revenge isn't just about allies. It is about timing. And that timing revealed itself when Jason announced, one Saturday morning, that his firm was hosting a gala. "A big night," he said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. "I want you there, Marissa. Everyone will be watching us." I forced a smile, hiding the storm inside me. A gala. Perfect. A stage filled with family, friends, colleagues, the exact audience I needed. That evening, after he left the room, I texted Claire. "We have our stage." And so the setup began. Claire and I worked in whispers. Emily quietly confirmed she would attend. My mother promised to sit in the front row. I arranged copies of the most damning evidence, triple-backed every recording, and even set up a timed presentation that could be triggered with a single click. Every detail mattered. Jason thought he was building an image of a loyal fiancé. I was building his ruin. The days ticked by slowly, each one a rehearsal in patience. At dinner I laughed at his jokes. At night I let him kiss my cheek. All the while, the truth sat ready in my hands like a loaded weapon. By the time the night of the gala drew near, my plan was no longer just an idea. It was a living thing, sharpened by betrayal and fueled by quiet allies who stood ready beside me. Jason had no idea. He thought he was untouchable. And that was exactly why the fall would be devastating. Once the stage had been chosen, I realized there was no turning back. Jason's gala was not just an event anymore. It was my battleground. If I failed, he would walk away untarnished, perhaps even stronger. But if I succeeded, I would rip his mask off in front of everyone who mattered to him. The first step was rehearsing my own composure. I could not waver. If I cried, if I faltered, he would spin it as hysteria. He was an expert at that, flipping stories, painting me as overly emotional. So I practiced in the mirror over and over until my expression was cold, calm, unshakable. Then came the strategy of evidence. I had more than enough. Recordings of him whispering promises to Lauren, text messages full of lies, screenshots of his late-night plans. But I needed to decide how to present them. If I stood on stage with nothing but anger, I would look unhinged. If I made it organized, undeniable, it would destroy him. Claire suggested a slideshow. Emily thought a video montage would hit harder. My mother simply said, "Make it impossible to deny." So I combined everything. I hired a discreet technician, not someone from Jason's circle, but a contact of Claire's. His job was simple. When I gave the signal, he would switch the gala screen from the firm's logo to my carefully prepared presentation. No mistakes. No glitches. One button. The presentation itself was a masterpiece of simplicity. It began with photographs of Jason and me, smiling in love, the image of loyalty. Then it shifted. The same weeks, the same days, but with Lauren by his side. Screenshots of overlapping dates, double-booked evenings, text messages proving he was playing us both. And finally the recordings. His voice. His words. His betrayal in surround sound. But I knew Jason. He would not crumble quietly. He would lash out, deny, shout. Which meant I needed to prepare for his reaction. That was where Emily came in. She agreed to stand when the moment arrived and confirm she had heard him brag at work. Claire would back me up as family. And my mother. Her presence alone would silence anyone who dared question my sanity. Still, there was one missing piece, Lauren. The woman who had been my best friend. Who had smiled in my face while stealing what was mine. I thought about confronting her directly, but that would ruin the element of surprise. Instead, I planned her trap. I sent her an invitation to the gala, signed from Jason's firm. A personal note attached. "Jason asked me to make sure you come. He wants you there." She would not be able to resist. After all, she thought she was winning. And that was the beauty of it. My revenge was not just against Jason. It was against them both. He wanted to play me and Lauren against each other. I would make them face each other, side by side, while the truth exploded around them. The closer the gala came, the more I lived in two worlds. Outwardly, I was the supportive fiancé, smiling at fittings, nodding when Jason spoke about his future. Inwardly, I was sharpening the blade of truth. Every night before bed, I opened the folder on my laptop and reviewed the evidence. I timed the sequence, checked the sound levels, rehearsed my words. But here is what I learned. Revenge is not just about evidence or planning. It is about control. And the greatest control is silence. Jason had no idea what was coming. Neither did Lauren. They thought they were untouchable. The night before the gala, I stood at my window, staring out at the city lights. My chest tightened with nerves, but my voice inside whispered, "This is it. Tomorrow their lies end." Still, a sliver of doubt pierced me. What if something went wrong? What if the technician backed out? What if Jason found out and shut it all down before I had my chance? That fear only sharpened my resolve. I had come too far to falter. And so, with my allies on standby, my evidence armed, and the stage set, I stepped into the night of the gala ready to ignite the explosion I had built. The night of the gala arrived, heavy with expectation. My dress shimmered beneath the chandeliers, chosen carefully to project strength, not fragility. Jason stood beside me, charming as ever. His arm draped around mine like I was his prized possession. If only he knew what I was carrying. The truth loaded like a weapon waiting for my signal. The ballroom glittered with power. Executives, clients, family, friends, even local press. Jason had always craved an audience, and tonight he had one large enough to satisfy his ego. But I wasn't here to feed it. I was here to starve it. The technician gave me a subtle nod from across the room. The presentation was ready, the button set. My allies were seated strategically. Claire near the front, Emily among the colleagues, my mother at the back, her gaze unflinching. And then came the first complication. Lauren walked in. I expected her. I had lured her. But what I did not expect was the way she entered. On Jason's arm. The room erupted in polite applause as if they were the evening's golden couple. My breath caught in my throat. I had imagined Lauren sneaking in, lingering at the edges, unsure of her role. Instead, she stood center stage, bold, glowing, wrapped in the silk Jason had probably bought her with the money he told me was tied up in investments. Every eye turned to me, waiting for my reaction. If I faltered here, the night would collapse. So I smiled, my lips steady though my insides trembled. Jason leaned close and whispered, "You don't mind, do you?" She insisted on coming. "You two are friends." Friends. The word sliced me open. Lauren smirked at me over Jason's shoulder, the smirk of someone who believed she had already won. My plan suddenly felt unstable. If she was openly flaunting their bond, what if Jason had already hinted to her that I would be here, that something might happen? What if the trap wasn't hers but mine? I gripped my champagne flute tightly, my knuckles pale. No, I told myself. Stick to the plan. Stick to the timing. Evidence does not lie. The speeches began. Jason, ever the performer, took the stage. He talked about leadership, growth, the future of the firm. He thanked his support system, glancing at me, then at Lauren. Half the audience noticed the dual glance. Some shifted in their seats. My mother narrowed her eyes. And then, the second complication. The technician slipped out of the room. I caught the movement from the corner of my eye. The man I had trusted to switch the screen vanished through the side door. My chest clenched. Had Jason discovered him? Had he been threatened? My entire plan hinged on that single click, that moment of exposure. Without it, I had nothing but words. Claire noticed too. She mouthed, "What's wrong?" I shook my head lightly, forcing myself not to panic. Jason continued, his voice confident, dripping with self-satisfaction. None of this would be possible without the incredible women in my life. Marissa, who grounds me, and Lauren, who inspires me. The room fell silent at the boldness of it. Gasps whispered through the air like a storm beginning. I could feel the fury rise in my throat, but I swallowed it down. My time was coming. I just needed to make sure the evidence reached the screen. I excused myself quietly, moving toward the side door, my heels tapping against the marble. Behind me, Jason kept speaking, unaware. Or perhaps too arrogant to care. I found the technician in the hallway, pale and shaken. "What's happening?" I hissed. He stammered. "One of Jason's people caught me near the equipment. They threatened to throw me out if I touched the controls again." My blood iced. Jason had built a fortress around his lies. For a moment, fear clawed at me. If I went back inside now, I would look like the betrayed fiancé standing helpless while her man flaunted his mistress. The humiliation would be complete. But then resolve hit me like lightning. If Jason thought he had cornered me, he had underestimated me yet again. I took the laptop from the technician's trembling hands. "Give me the drive. I'll do it myself." He hesitated, but I snatched it before he could refuse. My plan was broken but not destroyed. I would rebuild it with my own two hands. When I re-entered the ballroom, Jason was raising his glass, basking in the glow of admiration. Lauren's hand rested on his arm possessively, her diamonds catching the light. And I carried the proof that would reduce them both to ashes. I walked back into the ballroom carrying the drive like it was a torch ready to set the room ablaze. My heels struck the marble harder now, each step echoing louder than Jason's hollow words. He had no idea that the ground beneath him was about to vanish. Jason was mid-toast, his voice projecting with false confidence. To new beginnings, to loyalty, to love that lasts. His hand squeezed Lauren's fingers as though mocking me in plain sight. Applause rose, thin and uneasy, the crowd unsure how to react to this strange display of dual devotion. I made my way toward the stage. My palms were damp, but my eyes never left him. Every second felt stretched, every breath calculated. This was not only my revenge, this was justice. Jason spotted me and smirked, as if daring me to cause a scene. Lauren tilted her head, amused. She thought my silence meant surrender. She thought I was weak. I reached the edge of the platform. "Jason," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the noise. "I'd like a moment." A ripple of murmurs swept across the audience. Jason chuckled. "Now, sweetheart, this isn't your night. Let me finish." I cut him off. "No. This is my night." The technician's laptop was still connected to the projection system. All I had to do was plug in the drive and press play. I walked toward the screen, my pulse drumming. Jason tried to stop me, but I turned sharply, staring him down with the fury of every sleepless night he had given me. "Sit down," I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Something in my tone made him hesitate. For the first time, his arrogance cracked. I inserted the drive. The screen flickered. Gasps rippled through the audience as the first image appeared. Jason and Lauren. Together. At restaurants he claimed were business dinners. At hotels he said were out-of-town conferences. Their faces lit with secret smiles, their bodies pressed too close to deny. The room fell into stunned silence. Jason's smile collapsed. Lauren's hand slipped from his. The slideshow continued, image after image, text messages scrolling across the giant screen. Words like "can't wait to be done with her" and "she's too jealous to notice" blazed in bold letters for everyone to see. The evidence painted a picture more damning than any accusation I could have spoken aloud. Gasps turned into whispers. Whispers grew into outrage. The entire ballroom was watching his perfect world burn. Jason lunged toward me, his hand grabbing my arm. "Turn it off," he hissed, his voice low and panicked. I wrenched free. "No, Jason. You wanted an audience. Here it is." Lauren shrank back, her confidence draining with every new slide. She looked out at the crowd and saw what I wanted her to see: disdain, disgust, betrayal mirrored back at her from dozens of eyes. Jason's father, seated at the front, turned his face away, his jaw rigid with shame. Colleagues whispered behind raised hands, recording every second on their phones. I stood tall, refusing to look away. "This is the man who called me jealous," I said, my voice steady. "This is the man who thought lies could last forever." Jason tried to shout over me, but the room wasn't listening to him anymore. The images spoke louder than he ever could. The slideshow ended on one final photo. Jason slipping a ring onto Lauren's finger in a hotel room, champagne glasses waiting beside them. The same week he had proposed to me. The audience gasped as if the floor itself had split open. Jason staggered, his face pale. I turned to the crowd. "You wanted to know the truth. Now you have it." The silence that followed was crushing. Then suddenly applause. Not polite applause, sharp, deliberate, furious applause that seemed to slice the air. People weren't clapping for Jason. They were clapping for the exposure. And then, just as I thought my revenge was complete, Jason leaned in close, his voice trembling but defiant. "You think this ends me? You think you've won? You have no idea what I still have planned." The applause crashed like thunder, rolling through the ballroom until it rattled the chandeliers above. I stood motionless, staring at Jason, whose face had drained of all color. Lauren sat frozen, her mouth parted but no words forming. For the first time, both of them were speechless, exposed under the unforgiving light of truth. But the applause was not for me. Not exactly. It was for justice, for the spectacle, for the undeniable proof that had shattered Jason's carefully crafted mask. The crowd did not stay seated for long. People stood, some with phones raised, filming the carnage. Others turned to whisper behind their hands, faces twisting with disgust. Jason's colleagues exchanged glances that said everything. His career, his reputation, his so-called respect, gone. Jason slammed his fist on the podium. "Enough!" he roared, his voice cracking. "This doesn't prove anything." The audience laughed bitterly, a chorus of disbelief. One man shouted, "We all saw it, Jason." Another muttered, "Pathetic." Jason's father rose slowly from his chair, his eyes like steel. "You've disgraced us," he said, his voice carrying more weight than any shout. "And for what? Lies and lust?" Jason stumbled backward, shaking his head. "No, Dad, it's not like that." But his father turned away, refusing to listen. That rejection hit harder than any slap could have. Lauren finally found her voice, whispering frantically, "Jason, do something. Stop this." He rounded on her, spitting venom. "This is your fault. You pushed too hard. You wanted everything." Her eyes filled with tears, mascara streaking her cheeks. "Don't you dare blame me. You promised me everything. You swore." Their fight became the room's entertainment. The guests leaned forward as though watching a tragic play unfold live. But I stayed silent, arms crossed, the calm center of their storm. Then Jason turned on me. His chest heaved, his jaw clenched. You think you've destroyed me, Marissa? You think people will remember this forever? I can rebuild. I can explain. But you… He jabbed a finger toward me, his voice dripping with rage. You just made yourself look bitter. Jealous. Spiteful. I lifted my chin. Jealous. My voice sliced through the noise. I didn't need to say a word. The proof spoke for itself. The room erupted again, half with laughter, half with gasps. Jason's attempt to twist the narrative crumbled instantly. But then came his move. His whispered threat, now unleashed before everyone. You want war. Jason growled. Fine. War it is. You think you've taken my image? I'll drag you down with me. I'll tell them all your secrets. Every weakness. Every fear. Do you really think you're untouchable? The crowd hissed with shock. People exchanged wide-eyed glances, eager for more drama. Lauren shrank in her seat, desperate to disappear. I held Jason's glare, my voice steady. I don't need to be untouchable. I only needed one night. And tonight was enough. He lunged forward suddenly, as though to grab the microphone, but security intervened, pushing him back roughly. The ballroom buzzed louder, phones flashing like lightning strikes. Jason, once the center of admiration, now looked like a desperate criminal being dragged from his own stage. Lauren rushed to him, her heels clattering, her cries shrill. Jason! Don't let them do this. But Jason shook her off, snarling. Get away from me! The rejection cut her down in front of everyone. She froze, then collapsed into a chair, sobbing into her hands. Guests began leaving in groups, murmuring about scandals and lawsuits. Some looked at me with respect, others with morbid curiosity, but no one looked at Jason the same way ever again. Still, his final words echoed in my mind. War it is. I knew Jason well enough to understand he was not finished. Cornered animals fight the hardest, and he was already clawing for any way to wound me back. My chest tightened, not with fear but with anticipation. If he wanted to keep this war going, then I would be ready. Tonight had been my strike, tomorrow I would finish it. The last thing I saw before leaving the ballroom was Jason's twisted smile, even as security held him back. A smile that promised chaos. A smile that promised he still had one card left to play. And I knew deep down that card was meant for me. Morning light crept through my curtains, soft and golden, yet I felt none of its warmth. The night replayed in my mind like a storm refusing to pass. Jason's face twisted with rage. His father's disgust. Lauren's sobbing collapse. The applause, the gasps, the flash of cameras. I had exposed him, and in doing so set fire to everything he thought he controlled. But Jason's last words haunted me. War it is. I knew him too well. He would never surrender quietly. He would claw until there was nothing left of him or me. By mid-morning the war began. My phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from friends, relatives, even reporters. Some congratulated me for my courage. Others asked if the videos were real. But then came the darker wave. Jason's counterattack. He had gone online. Screenshots of fabricated messages, doctored emails, and twisted half-truths spread like poison. He painted me as manipulative, claiming I had framed him out of spite. He called me unstable, jealous, and dangerous. And Lauren, desperate to salvage her pride, echoed his lies. Together they tried to flip the story. For a moment my chest tightened. What if people believed them? What if my victory became a new set of chains? But then I remembered. I had prepared for this. I hadn't exposed Jason recklessly. I had layers of truth waiting like ammunition. I called my lawyer Evelyn, the sharpest woman I knew. Her voice was calm, measured. Let him scream. Lies burn out fast when confronted with facts. We'll move quickly. By afternoon, Evelyn had filed an injunction. Jason's posts were flagged, and evidence of his smear campaign was preserved for court. But legal battles take time. Public opinion moves faster. So I made my move. I released a longer video. Not just the screenshots from the stage, but timestamps, receipts, voice notes, even footage of Jason entering a hotel with Lauren on nights he claimed he was working late. Every detail meticulously arranged. The internet turned. Within hours, hashtags with his name trended. Not in admiration but mockery. Memes painted him as a fraud, a cheater, a cautionary tale. Clips of Lauren crying spread like wildfire. My inbox shifted again, this time with strangers writing, "You gave me strength. I wish I had your courage." Jason, however, did not disappear. By evening, he tried one last desperate strike. He arrived at my doorstep, pounding the door, shouting for me to come outside. His voice was raw, broken. "Marissa, you ruined me. Open this door. We need to talk." I stood behind the locked door, my heart steady. He was no longer a man in control. He was a shadow clawing at what he had lost. Neighbors came out, filming him, shaking their heads. Jason realized too late that his tantrum was another nail in his coffin. Security escorted him away, and his screams faded down the street. That night, as I sat by my window, I let out the breath I had been holding for months. I had fought, endured, and revealed. Yet I knew tomorrow would demand one more act. The final strike. The courtroom was coming. His lies, his smear campaign, his collapse, it would all converge there. And I would walk in not as his victim, but as the woman who turned betrayal into a weapon. Still, sleep eluded me, because even in defeat, Jason had smiled. A strange, unsettling smile. What did he still believe he held? The question echoed in the silence of my room. And in that silence, I realized the war wasn't finished. Not yet. The day of the hearing arrived with a sky the color of steel. Heavy clouds pressed down, promising rain. I walked into the courthouse in silence, my heels clicking against the marble floor. My hands did not tremble. My heart did not race. The months of fear, doubt, and betrayal had hardened me into something unshakable. Jason was already there, dressed in a suit that hung off him like a borrowed costume. His once polished face looked hollow, drained of the arrogance that used to follow him like a shadow. Lauren sat 2 rows behind him, sunglasses hiding swollen eyes. Neither of them looked at me. When the judge entered, the room stilled. I felt the weight of every eye, not just on me but on the truth I carried. Jason's lawyer began with the same tired story, that I was jealous, vindictive, and desperate. He waved around fabricated evidence, as though smoke and mirrors could erase months of deceit. Then it was my turn. Evelyn stood tall beside me, her voice sharp as glass. Piece by piece, she laid out the truth. Receipts, videos, phone records, screenshots, and testimony from friends who had seen Jason's lies firsthand. She revealed not just his infidelity but the financial manipulation, the threats, the smear campaign. Every secret he thought he could bury was unearthed in that room. Jason shifted in his seat, sweating under the fluorescent lights. The confidence he had always worn like armor was gone. Lauren buried her face in her hands as more evidence tied her to his deception. The judge's voice rang like a gavel before the gavel even struck. This court finds the claims against Marissa unfounded and malicious. The evidence overwhelmingly supports her case. With those words, Jason's last weapon, his lies, shattered. The gavel came down. Final. Irreversible. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Microphones pushed toward my face, cameras flashing. For the first time, I did not shrink from the light. I let the world hear my voice. I was called jealous. I was told I was crazy. But jealousy is not the same as knowing the truth. Betrayal has a sound, and once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. He tried to take my dignity, my peace, and my voice. But today proves something bigger. No one can steal your truth unless you let them. And I did not let him. The crowd erupted in questions, but I walked past them, steady and calm. Behind me, Jason slipped away unnoticed. His empire of lies had crumbled to dust, and there was no stage left for him to stand on. Weeks passed. The world moved on, but I carried no bitterness, no weight. My life became quiet again, but this time it was a quiet I chose. A quiet filled with the hum of possibility, with doors I could now open without fear of him slamming them shut. One evening, I pulled out a blank journal. On the first page, I wrote in bold letters, "My story does not end with betrayal. It begins with freedom." I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. Not a fragile smile, but one of strength, of certainty. Because the truth was this. Jason gave me betrayal, but I gave him consequences. He thought he had silenced me, but I became louder than ever. And in the end, the woman he called jealous, weak, and unstable was the one who stood in the light, while he sank into shadows. So to anyone listening, Let this be your reminder. Do not swallow betrayal. Do not shrink in the face of lies. Take your proof, take your courage, and take your stage. Because revenge does not have to be fire and fury. Sometimes it is calm. Sometimes it is measured. And sometimes it is simply telling the truth so loudly that no one can ever deny it again. That is what I did. That is how I won. And that is why I will never let anyone write my story for me again.